standing at the front door of the restaurant, and this dude walks up to me. It's Muhammad Ali. And he says, "You got a burger on the menu?" And I go, "You got a reservation?" And he goes, and he takes his wrist like this and does a fake punch at me in my chest. And I'm like, "Oh my God, Muhammad Ali just threw a punch at me in my smart ass."
Welcome back to Connection Request. I'm Joel Leeman. Today on the show, I'm talking to Tim Niver, the restaurateur behind beloved Minnesota restaurants Mucci's Italian in St. Dinette, owner of Mucci's Frozen Food, and host of Niver Niver Land, a podcast about the changing restaurant industry. Tim has worked in restaurants for a long time, working here in Minnesota, as well as New York, Colorado, and a stint in Las Vegas opening up the Bellagio. And I've long been a fan of Tim's, as we talk about in the episode. I especially appreciate how open he is about the ups and downs of his industry through his podcasts and social media and interviews he does. You know, he displays that openness and vulnerability in our conversation as we talk about what success looks like in his field, what he's learned from going through the pandemic, and how the restaurant industry is still changing dramatically today. We also talk about his multiple business and creative adventures, going toe-to-toe with Muhammad Ali, and his dream guest for Niver Niver Land. We'll get to my conversation with Tim in just a minute, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, SK Coffee. This season, we are thrilled to be sponsored by SK Coffee, a specialty coffee roaster based in Minnesota, shipping worldwide. Listeners of the show will remember Sam from season 1, where he shared his journey from musician to entrepreneur. We'll hear more from Sam later in the episode.
I'm Tim Niver, and I've professionally been in the restaurant industry for lots of years. I'm happily married, and my partner works with me in the business, runs the business. I have two lovely children, one who's 16 and a junior in high school, and that's an interesting time of life. It's really cool to see him where he's at. And then my daughter is now out of college and teaching. She's a second grade teacher. And I'm very fulfilled by where my family is right now and what we're trying to do and what I see the kids growing into. And work-wise, I've just been doing the restaurant thing for a long time, and I'm still in it, and I'm active in it, and I'm busy. I'm happy. Feels good right now.
For those maybe who don't have the pleasure of knowing Tim a little bit like I do, or at least some of the wonderful restaurant experiences he's created, you're a star in the restaurant world in Minnesota, at least, and maybe well beyond. You can correct director than that. But I guess one thing I want to
allow me to.
You're not gonna let that go?
No, you said you can correct that, and I feel like it should be corrected. I don't see myself as a star in the restaurant industry. I've been very lucky to roll with. I'm in this industry, but I've been very lucky to roll with what the times gave me. There is some excellent timing and wonderful people that I've worked with, and so star. I know some stars, but while I appreciate that, and I know what I've got into this industry, but I'm not a star yet. I might still be working on that.
Okay, we'll unpack that. That actually leads me to one of the first things I want to talk to you about, which is the idea of success. I've spent the past few days researching you and reading old interviews that you've done over the years and listening to your great podcast, which we'll talk about later. And by my eyes, as somebody not in your industry, admittedly, it seems you've had a really immense and storied career in the food scene. You've worked with some really amazing people. You have owned and run beloved restaurants in this community. You've won awards. You've had really glowing press. You've had interesting profiles. You have started your own podcast, and people are not only listening to it, but they come and see you in a live show. But in the first episode of your podcast, Niver Niver Land, with your friend Stephanie March, talked about success and you said, I don't feel successful. And so I guess my question to you is, are you successful? And if not, what does sort of that even word mean to you?
I'm successful now. When we started the podcast, we were still very much in that reeling feeling coming out of COVID, and questions were looming pretty large. And I went on a big search, part of it being with the podcast for myself. And to remain relevant and to be in the public eye while talking about restaurant stuff. Okay. And through the last year and a half, potentially two, of opening myself up, reconsidering where I am today, I can say that this is success. I feel safe saying it. I've explored what I've done enough. I've ignored what I've done enough to get to this place. Success for me can't be measured by the money that I thought I was going to make, because I think that used to be the drive. And then we got through these last couple of years, which were really trying. I did lose a restaurant. It's not a failure. It was a success just to keep that going.
Yeah.
So I'd say that I've done the work for myself, on myself, and inside myself. Plus, I've come out of the clouds a little bit. And I really feel I've been able to see clearly where I am, and that I don't need to do anything else to be successful. I am successful. I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
I have as much comfort in myself as I've had in a long time. And really, Joel, we're starting over. We're starting over from scratch. Our industry was in such tumult really before we went into COVID. We had a lot of big things changing, and payroll changes with increased minimum wages in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and the murder of George Floyd, and COVID. And obviously there was, even before that, we had changes we needed to consider. And then on top of that, other stuff happened. So I think the industry is really still acclimating to what it's going to be like now.
Yeah.
But I feel successful, and I feel really good about that. I feel at home there. And it was for me, it wasn't anybody else's kind of determination of that. It really, because people could tell you're good, or this is so good, but if you internalize that too much, that can go wrong for you. And our business is somewhat built on humility. And from the front of the house scenario, the way I see it, humility is really important. That boastful, I'd rather be busting your chops about something and have an attitude that way than be talking about what I've done, right? And tomorrow is another day in our industry that we just don't know what's going to happen. It feels like there's less knowledge about what's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to that excitement, and also to the generation of risk and anxiety and whatever else you feel when you're looking at what you do in the restaurant industry.
Let me just say that is really beautiful. And you've already brought up a lot of the themes I want to get into with you. But let's talk about the different kind of success, which is, it might be small, but I need to disclose now that Mucci's, the restaurant that you run, one of the restaurants that you run, is my favorite restaurant, and a big part of why I wanted to have you on the show. And if you'll indulge me in letting you tell you a small story about the main reason it's my favorite restaurant, is that the first couple times my wife and I went there, we checked it out, and I'm like, this is great. This is a lovely place. And we had this server there, and he was super nice and just so warm and welcoming and religious, made you feel like you were important and whatever. And the food is amazing. That is obviously a big part of why it's so good. But I went back a couple of times. This same guy happened to be my server again. He just really made us feel at home. Then a few months later, I was reading an article and I found out that guy was you, the owner of the restaurant. And that just blew my mind, that here this guy who was our server and made us feel so warm and welcome and just left a really positive mark on us happened to be the guy who owns the thing. And I know that for you, something you talk about a lot is that service is really important to you, and that to this day, you continue to be on the floor and doing a variety of different roles, not just sitting in a back office somewhere scheming up your next business venture. Will you talk a little bit about like why is that important to you, and how does that fit into sort of the rest of the aspects that sort of people maybe do think about in the food business?
Hmm. We opened a small restaurant, and oftentimes when you do that, you end up being the one working in it. It's an intimate scenario. Half of the year, the restaurant's 44 seats. Mucci's is my mother's maiden name, so it carries with it a level of respect
Hmm.
that I carry with me. It's just the family part of it, how the food made me feel when I was growing up, that it culturally is important to me, that it's a connection to my heritage, which got washed a bit away as immigrants were trying to be assimilated into speaking English. We
Hmm.
lost, the Italian language in our home early before it got to me. So these are things, Mucci's, in the way we serve, and the reason that I'm on the floor is number one, because it's very necessary for the owner to be attached to something so small, unless they really don't want to do anything, but it doesn't generate enough to feed investors.
Hmm.
So it's a personal, intimate experience. But on the other side, I decided a long time ago that I was going to be doing this for a long time. And my connection to it and my level of connection to it has kept it good. It's kept it with my level of standard and execution. And good restaurants have these waves, and staff changes and a mood changes, or people get into a rut, or whatever, and you just have to go with it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we've been able to really be buoyant culinarily, creatively, on top of having love for what we do, and love as the essence of what we do. That's really why I'm there. I started serving to as a living, like to make money
Yeah.
as a person. And I realized that it's a really valuable career. It's not
Hmm.
say teaching, but anywhere you go, like a teacher, you can be employed. You have a skill that is a
Hmm.
skill, and now to me, it's a craft that I own, and very few people have seen the different levels of my craft that I have, and I'm the older guy now, and I think it comes out still. There's some still classic feel, some hominess when you walk in. She's, hey man, service is really hard too. I don't always want to be doing it. I always have to be on. I
Yeah.
always have to refer to my manners
Yeah.
often when I'm thinking not to.
Yeah.
You
Totally.
can't say everything you're thinking, but
Yeah.
I often do. I often do.
Yeah.
And it's good to have self-awareness between you and your guest.
Yeah. You make it look easy, and genuinely, I think I share that story because I think it is reflective of you, and also, yeah, it just, there's a lot of ways that I can see, and I think others can see the way that you lead, but also through service, which I think is really cool.
It's really cool. Thank you.
Tim,
I love it.
let's go back in time a little bit. You worked at McDonald's when you were 15,
Hmm.
and that, I think, at least is part of what you've talked about previously as being your first kind of exposure to the world of service and food.
Yeah,
I'm curious about Tim back at that time of life, and then if I were to wrap a few more years onto there, you did go to college and you got what I believe you've referred to as a real job, and that didn't last very long. Tell me about Tim in those years. This is a show about sort of career journeys, right? What
yeah,
were your ambitions and hopes and dreams and thoughts about career, and what did you originally set out to do in those younger years of your life?
sure. Studied in Spain. I was over there. This was '92 during the Olympics, during the World's Fair, during
Oh,
some it was an amazing year to be there. I picked up Spanish as a language, and I came home from school, and I was substitute teaching, and I went and I lived with my parents for a minute, but I went up to Albany, got a job with a multi-level marketing company in their corporate office. And all
Hmm.
my buddies had fled out to Colorado. So I was working in an office trying to get people to continue their memberships, not really understanding what was happening. And I thought I was going to find something more, say, international business. I was thinking about being in New York, but it was a little busy, getting back from school and kind of wanting to go right to the grind.
Yeah.
I followed my friends out to Colorado with my serving skills. And I worked at the High Regency at Beaver Creek.
Hmm.
And at the base of the mountain, I did my ski bump thing, but I had a guy there, a mentor named Graziano Buzzi. Graziano Buzzi was the kind of guy, he would meet the movie star at the front door, get them seated, take their order, go back, spit it at the cook, go back to the table, schmooze them again, go back, he could really do everything and just finesse all the things. So that was actually super foundational to me wanting to take care of people because
Hmm.
everybody just smiled back at him. Uh, from that, I met my life partner in Colorado, and then a short time after that, I knew I again had to make the switch between being a server and a manager. So when I moved here chasing my wife, I got a management job at Pronto,
Hmm.
and that was like a real scenario where I was actually learning and being trained to be a manager and to fulfill the other side of the skill, like the technical end, the number end, the management end, the working with people and the inventory and purchasing end. And so I did a lot of that was a Parasoli owned restaurant, by the way. And so I did a lot of foundational work there. Then from there, this is when Buca de Beppo was rolling out. I got offered a job to be a paisano, which is a term they use for a partner,
Hmm.
and which we turned down. And looking back, that was a great opportunity. But we decided to go to New York. We went to New York. I beat the street in a couple of bad suits and landed a job with a New York Restaurant Group through a connection I had. And I worked at a couple places there. Satay, Smith Molinsky is a famous steakhouse. I worked there. Another place called Maloney and Porcelli. And in New York, I learned swagger. I learned
Hmm.
how to be strong, not take the crap, how to use that strength and smartness and quickness to your benefit to keep people doing what you need them to do as you're trying to fill in the puzzle of what it is to fill up a restaurant and then fill it up again and have it seem flowing. But also, we got to hit this thing and make sure you are XXX. And so I learned a lot of that
Hmm.
there, and that toughens me up.
Hmm.
And then I met a chef named Sam DeMarco, and he owned a place on First and First in the Lower East Side. And it was a hot little spot, and he's a hot little Italian, like spunky.
Hmm.
And we noticed each other, and one night I was in there eating a tasting menu with my wife, and Steve Wynn, that owned all the casinos out in Vegas, was there, and Sam was all running around. He's from Brooklyn. He's like, all right, I'm busy, but here, eat this. Anyway, he got picked up by Steve Wynn to go open up the Bellagio and to have a restaurant in the Bellagio.
Yeah.
And then my friend Sam chose me to go out to Vegas with him to open the Bellagio. And that taught me class. And also, it was cutthroat. It's
Hmm.
all risk reward there.
Hmm.
But there's a level of class with which you can exert on even being tough. Huh?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of finesse
Yeah.
there, a lot of street cred, even more than New York a little bit.
Yeah.
People are shiftier, but with their words and their actions, always something to gain. So
Yeah.
you're always on the lookout there, but it was really good.
Throughout that time, you painted a picture of evolution from server to management to like opening up places and that kind of stuff. I'm curious, how much of your career at that point felt planned and intentional as opposed to following opportunities and connections where they led you?
That was the plan. That was the plan. Following the connections
I
and
like that.
opportunities.
So a little bit
That
of
was the
both.
plan. Moving to
Yeah.
New York puts you in the center of the restaurant universe in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. You make connections, and it's almost going to Penn State, right?
Yeah.
You know that when you put that on your resume, that people
Hmm.
know where you've been. So if you were working in New York and you work at a reputable place in New York, it's undoubtedly somewhat similar that they say this dude worked at 49th and 3rd.
Yeah.
All the power brokers were there.
Yeah.
All the superstars were there.
Yeah.
Classic haunt. So yeah, that was part of the plan, and I worked into it. I actually got
Yeah.
to work there because of a fire in another restaurant.
Yeah.
So they moved. You never know how it goes, but
Yeah.
incomparable experience. Taking the chance
Yeah.
to make a move and not be you can be scared or have fear or whatever of it, but to go and really take a bite out of the Big Apple.
So let's fast forward now a little bit, and I'm sorry to be jumping you all around, but that's just the nature of the beast today.
Sure is.
And I think I really came onto you and learned a lot more about you, Tim Niver, throughout the pandemic because, well, lots of reasons that we'll get into, including you started the podcast, but you just were really open about your journey and your restaurant's journey going through that time. And I think you were sort of intentional about trying to share as much of the experience, I imagine, both with the industry as well as your patrons, right? So that people knew what was going on and could figure out ways to support you. I went back and read some different press that you gave during the time. And a couple of things that struck me is just how, first of all, what a crazy time that was for everyone. But I think it probably felt different to you in a way because your entire industry was being thrown for a crazy loop. I'm just curious now, with the benefit of hindsight and without us spending too much time talking about the pandemic, like what do you feel like you learned through that time period of your life?
So much. It was invaluable. We pressed stop in some aspects on things. And it did take me to a very low point. I'm self-diagnosed as being depressed literally for a couple months, and I felt it coming through it all. I think because it because you're sad or because it hurts or you don't know what to do, I was able to seek, even in my kind of darker moments, an angle on change and an angle on progression and an angle on just finding a creative way to keep going, keep pushing,
Yeah.
and be and I always have said to my managers, I want to share every little bit of my feelings with you about business, because if I don't, I think I'm cheating you on the real intensity, the
Hmm.
thing you don't think you'll have to think about. And I think it's vital that you share very specific feelings and those moments with people, financial and otherwise.
Yeah.
They don't have to carry them with them, and giving people a sense of ownership is telling them what it feels like, whether it's good or bad or the other thing.
Yeah.
The restaurant culture in a little bit of Minnesota, I find that humility often leads that some of us lead with often leads to quietness when there's troubles.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I did not turn to quietness when there was trouble. I brought my voice to it and my feelings to it. I had a solo episode where I just talked about what COVID felt like. This is what it is. This is how hard it is. And we need help. And I am not used to asking for help.
Hmm.
So because you don't ever want to admit as a restaurant that it could be failing, that it's getting slower or whatever, because a slow restaurant feels like it's a slow restaurant, and people can just grasp onto that energy and say, wow, that place is slow. And then there's real things that happen, Joel. Real things. 8 years ago, Lower Town had retirees all over these buildings.
Hmm.
Retirees looking at Lower Town as a place to invest. It was gentrifying, for lack of a better word. It was finding its own later in life personality, like the people
Yeah.
that lived in the building. And then during COVID, nobody wanted to be stuck in the city. It felt very enclosed.
Hmm.
And the entire Lower Town set of tenants flipped. And we literally don't have the same people living there anymore.
Hmm.
And they can't afford I love who lives there, but they can't afford to eat at my restaurants.
Yeah, yeah,
But there's so many factors as to how and why restaurants are successful.
yeah,
The downtowns are the islands right now. Suburbs are busier. People are finding security closer to home. Hey man. So I felt like, why the hell wouldn't I share my feeling on this? Other than the fact that when I do, I feel weird being vulnerable to it. But
yeah,
hell, if somebody doesn't know what's going on, generally in the industry, or more so, if they feel alone, if another operator feels alone
yeah,
in the sense that this is really freaking hard,
yeah,
come on, don't feel alone in it. And I think some of my words will connect to certain people at certain times. Like I was on my journey through here. I put everything on the table, man.
yeah,
Everything. If I had 10 baskets, I had to whittle them down to three, and I'm focusing on three, and the rest is superfluous. Superfluous. So I got a different perspective, and that
yeah,
allowed me to feel my own success. That allowed me to fuel the fact that I understand I'll be working in my restaurant as long as it'll carry me.
yeah,
But I love it.
yeah. Wow. I just got to say, there's a lot of things I admire the heck out of you for, but I think it
Thanks, boss.
takes a lot to be vulnerable and open. And like, again, reading through press from the past couple of decades, it seems like in a lot of ways you have done that for a long time in different ways, whether it's through social media or it's just like being incredibly open with your staff or it's being open in interviews. But yeah, I think you probably took that to a new level during the pandemic, which I admire. I don't think enough people in leadership positions do that. So
It's
good on
hard.
you.
Leadership is
Yeah.
hard, and it's not necessarily everything everybody wants to hear.
Yeah.
And never want to seem like a griper from our perspective. We're here to serve. You don't want to hear us, still not understanding what the detritus of COVID is. Hey man, COVID is still affecting us,
Yeah.
at work.
Yeah.
It's not really gone, man. But people, what changed the most wasn't us. People changed the most.
Hmm.
That we are basically the same,
Hmm.
but people change the most.
Hmm.
We're readapting to and re-inviting and reconnecting with
Yeah.
folks who've changed
Yeah.
dramatically.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that and understand it
Yeah.
and not be offended by it.
Speaking of change, as you alluded to in the opening, you had to close a restaurant during the pandemic. And you, over your career, have been a part of a lot of restaurant openings and you've been a part of some restaurant closings, including of projects that were really loved and successful and all that. I'm just like, how does that feel as a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a person who employs people? How does that feel to be a part of both of those highs and maybe lows? I assume I'm projecting. And I don't know, do you get better at that? What have you learned through that process of going through really big things like that?
Mm-hmm. I think for a long time when it's hardest, you really have the situation up in the pressure on things. If it takes a lot to get me back up to the ceiling now of where the stress was,
Hmm.
I'm here and I've seen what's in between. So this all feels like experience
Yeah.
and a little more comfort with the absolute degree of insanity of things that we just went through over the last 4 years. Like, okay, you know, what else is there?
Yeah.
And I feel like handling that has it's helpful now. And I just don't put as much stress on the little things. I really don't. Like the details matter so much, but putting stress on them, it doesn't, it's not important.
There's a lot to love about SK Coffee, our presenting sponsor for Connection Request. Every time I talk to SK's founder, Sam Chelberg, I'm fascinated to learn more about what makes their coffee so special and why people are so drawn to them. Here's Sam.
We're not a company that you're going to get the exact same thing over and over again. It's always going to be an exploration. This is literally an agricultural product, and every year it's different. So It's like wine in that way.
But something even more special than the coffee itself has always stood out to me. It's the entire SK team's passion. They treat their work like a real art form, and each of them care deeply about coffee's people, place, and process. Here's Sam again.
The way we're trying to tell that story is not through, interesting crafted cocktail coffee drinks, right? It's all, what is the coffee trying to say? What is the producer, the place, the plant itself trying to say, the process? And we are literally translating that communication from the raw product into your cup.
To learn more about SK Coffee, visit skcoffeeplease.com or check out their excellent Instagram page. If you live in Minnesota, stop into one of their cafes in St. Paul or Minneapolis. You might even spot me there. All those links are in the show notes. Okay, now back to the show. Let's talk about Niver Niver Land a little bit. So you mentioned that you started that project, I think in part as a way to just express yourself and communicate with what was going on and talk with other people in the restaurant industry. But yeah, tell me a little bit more, like when you're going through what you describe as a really rough time, it's not everyone's idea to start a podcast. Tell me a little bit more about like why you did that. And let me say, for anyone listening to this, I know absolutely nothing about the restaurant industry, but I listen and I find out lots, and I think it's really interesting, and you have on great guests and great conversations. So regardless of who you are and your affinity, you should listen to it. But yeah, tell me a little bit about that project and why it started and what it is now.
Yeah, there is a quest for relevancy when it's really hard to find a channel to people where they can relate to you. They're going out less. I needed to relate and see my guest in another way without it being at the table.
Yeah.
That I thought could be inviting and promote the restaurants and also parts of the industry and myself. And it really started as a way to be in the picture with other prominent folks and continue like a path of relevancy, really keeping yourself connected to others that are important.
Yeah.
It turned into me having that, but also became more of an expression of myself. It's another story to tell. It's a collection of stories and moments, and it contains the journey of a big part of my recent life in it and how my philosophies are now. So it started out maybe more towards trying to be a promotional thing.
Yeah.
But it's turned into a self-soothe and expression without the risk of having some financial fallout, where I can be myself and have that moment on a mic and share a moment with a person, share things that have been hard with other people, and just bring a little bit more up here.
Yeah.
I feel like in general, people are just started.
Yeah.
And I am afraid of cancel, and I am afraid of cancel culture, and I am afraid of saying the wrong thing at the same time. Damn, if you're not saying anything at all, what are you?
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I don't see the point.
Yeah.
I don't see the point in taking a chance and saying something wrong while you're trying to say something.
Yeah.
Instead of saying nothing.
Yeah.
So it really has evolved into a whole bunch of things that have filled me up.
Yeah.
In a similar way that the hospitality stuff does.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time. I don't want to be sounding like the complaint, but I do telling it like it is. And that's not always what people want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm treading a line. But I also think business owners need to be a little bit more out there with, what's happening in themselves and connect to their businesses personally and not have it be some sort of shell company.
Yeah.
And those restaurants are good too. But like an old bookstore, I want to be able to, keep that old book smell in that place. I want to have it smell like the sauce when you walk in. And that's the kind of shop I got.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm in for.
And again, for anyone who hasn't checked it out, I gotta say, it's so well done. You've got an entire team behind it. You've got a multicam setup. You've got just a great producer. Shout out to Matt.
Yeah.
You've taken it on the road to Milwaukee. You've done live shows, right? It's like,
we went live. These were all extremes again.
Yeah.
Doing a live dinner service during that
podcast
was so nerve-wracking.
Really?
but it's so nerve-wracking,
Yeah.
dude. So there's 4 courses, 2 items per plate. So essentially, it's an 8-course menu in 4 courses with beverage pairings in about a planned hour and 15 minutes
Yeah.
while doing a live podcast. How everything after I sit down is out of my control.
Yeah.
I trust the system.
Yeah.
It's still all nerve-wracking, dude.
Yeah.
So I am, even in my podcast, pushing it, making myself feel stress, and also the fulfillment of trying connections that I haven't made before.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And there's a bunch of white guys with podcasts, man. We know there's a bunch of white guys out there, white dudes. Good on ya, whatever. And it can't all be watched. But it is important, if you have an expression, to get it out of you.
Yeah.
One way or the other. I don't paint.
Yeah.
I don't paint.
I don't paint. I have a podcast. We
Yeah.
should put that on a t-shirt. What will there be more live shows? I wish I would have gotten to it, but I didn't. But will there? You've done 2 now? 1 or 2?
To
Okay.
Yeah, Jesse Pollock and my good friend Rob Jones over at Meteor Bar, we did a cocktail based one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've listened
Yeah,
to both the
there'll
episodes.
be
Nice.
more.
Cool.
I'll tell you, it is. I'm trying to give people value, and we undervalue in trying to give people value. Like I said, there was a $60 hour and 15-minute recording, and everybody came in for that hour and a half or whatever, or 2 probably.
Yeah.
And got well fed and all that. But there were hours and hours of stuff that I did before that and unpaid.
Yeah.
Because this is like a marketing budget for
Yeah.
us. So I'm getting paid by my business by helping it. We get people in. There's a lot of effort and expense to make a quality production, to put together a quality restaurant, and then a show on top of it. It's difficult.
Yeah.
I'll find a way to continue, but as I do, it's an expensive undertaking. So
Yeah.
people are going to have to come on the ride with me, because I can't continue to do it for like free or pay a little bit. Like,
Totally.
it's expensive. But I love it. I love it.
I'm excited to watch that part of your journey unfold. And
And I don't know what's next there.
Yeah.
I don't.
You're great
It's
at
coming.
it. So
Thanks.
maybe if the restaurants ever don't work out, just flip to podcasting. You never know.
I would love part of the dream, really, one of the baskets that I chose for myself.
Yeah.
I have my restaurants, right? I have my frozen food line,
Yeah.
which is a different avenue, a different chase, a different gig and job and life altogether.
Yeah.
And then I have my family and the importance there. And then I have a podcast. So like
Yeah.
my buckets are like right here close to me, and I get to do with them what I want. It's really lovely. These are my
Yeah.
toys, and it's been fun finding it though. Joel,
Yeah.
it's fun.
I'm glad, because I think we all need more fun in our lives. Tell me a little bit about the frozen business. I've had the pizza. It's great. I see that there's lasagna out now. For those of you who at least live in this area, I don't know if you're national yet, go buy it if you're looking for really good, high quality frozen food. But tell me about, I feel like a lot of people, especially like you, who really care about craft, maybe would never want to put their food that they spend so much time, effort, and love on in a restaurant, the trust that it could live in that environment. So like, how did that start, and how's it going?
Transferring quality is a difficult task.
Yeah.
Primarily, we use the same ingredients as we do at Mucci's in the lasagna that we make for frozen.
Yeah.
So for me, transferring that quality actually it wasn't too difficult, because I know it so well, and we're able to share our flavor tendencies with somebody and have a similar identification from a palate standpoint of this is right.
Yeah.
Now, the business itself is just as hard as the restaurant business, really, to break into, to do volume. We started with pizzas, which you might think is easy, but I hand fry those myself, man. Every one of those crusts, about 20,000 a year, I fry those myself.
Wow.
So, it's about getting things out there and continuing to keep them out there, finding creative ways to have inventory so you're not behind and not have carrying costs. It's a whole new ballgame. the upside potential is there too, where I'm not really pursuing opening restaurants because I don't know where to find the margins. I don't have all. I have the margins are set in the frozen kind of differently, but you really need to have sales avenues. So the trick is getting through the gatekeepers and finding those sales avenues, and that's the other part of my job now. So
Yeah.
I find it challenging and quite exhilarating, and that offers me some risk and some real potential should
Yeah.
even one of the products break through.
Yeah. And so based on that, you're saying they have not broken through yet. Like, do
No,
you have
I
targets
don't
in your
think
mind of
you arrive.
what that would mean or look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I'm not trying to put my lasagna in every store. It doesn't work. It is a premium product. We
Mhm.
don't scrimp on ingredients. So it doesn't, but it can't go in every store. It just won't sell. So
Yeah.
we are focused on natural food stores because the ingredients are appropriate. We are focused on the Kowalskis of the world that are really high-end store offering people with disposable income the opportunity to have a product that actually delivers quality and convenience.
Yeah.
And I still, this is my sales. This is my sales pitch. It
Please.
delivers quality and convenience because I did a video that I saw that you saw. I did a video for the brand,
Yeah.
and it was a time comparison between a time and price comparison between buying Mucci's frozen lasagna and bringing it home and having the quality time it takes to make a lasagna with good stuff. And I provided that for people so they could really see it. In an hour, you have something that I and my ma would be proud of. We
Yeah.
really we're proud of it, right?
Yeah.
And you can make your own lasagna, but it's going to cost you more money and take you time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I understand the value, the real value in making the lasagna from scratch too. So I don't lose the romance in this,
Hmm.
but I can supply you with a dinner that gets you really close, man.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. So the same sense is there, the same story's there.
Yeah.
The packaging looks away and it's slightly disruptive and slightly modern and slightly classic. Like I see Italian design and
Yeah.
and I'm really proud of it. And I could probably slide it into under somebody's nose at the restaurant and they wouldn't know.
Yeah. That's cool. That's really cool.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
As we've talked through this conversation, I knew about your many businesses, but man, between running restaurants, serving in those restaurants, having a frozen food business, having a podcast, spending time on Instagram, both promoting yourself and maybe doing other kinds of things, like how do you have the hours in the day and spending time with your family? Like, how do you have the time in the day to do all that? And to come talk to me for an hour.
Yeah, my part of the way that I'm feeling success is that I manage my own schedule for the most part, meaning I do basic. I'm not tethered. I have a couple shifts at the restaurant where I'm tethered and I need to be there for those shifts. But outside of those shifts during the day, there are folks that assist me so much in the day-to-day operations that it does free me up to do these things. And I accept the fact that I have a couple jobs going concurrently.
Yeah.
I can't do them all to their fullest extent. And so part of my having to stay chill is understanding that I do what I can do, and the process will remain slow because I can be comfortable in the process. So if it grows, it's going to grow because I have the time to be me, to get outside and have nature fill me up, to be on Instagram, take pictures of my cats and have some chill time, like whatever it is. So I'm not, I'm available every day, but I don't do it all every day.
Yeah.
I would say it is hard. It is hard not to do something every day. So something probably does happen every day, work wise, but also there's this, it's genetic. In my, my mom has it, and even my dad has it, though we don't know what his heritage is, right? We don't know where he's from. My mom's 100% Italian, and we have this slightly nervous energy, and we just have to be doing things. It's like a natural tempo,
Yeah.
more than anything else.
I like that. That makes sense.
I do get pushed. I do get pushed. Get tired. I gotta lay down.
Before we get to the sort of quickfire rounds, is there anything that I forgot to ask you about, or any wisdom that you would impart to me and our listeners today, Tim?
Yeah, maybe just this. Part of what's helped me over the last few months is not only talking but listening. And it's a super powerful tool. Quiet listening, intent listening, really connecting with somebody is a thing that I see underutilized. And I'm really trying to not only talk about stuff, but to listen better. And I'm not always patient in that, but I really hope that we all find some more social equilibriums where we can all be freer and hang out with each other. But also part of that is not saying it, but taking it in. And I've been lucky enough to do that. It's part of the deal. When you do a podcast or when you own a restaurant, you really have to listen and see what people need, and then it's easier to deliver.
Yeah.
So that quiet contemplation of what's happening around you is something I think we all need to look at a little more.
Wise words. You ready for a quick rapid fire before we let you go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Any crazy stories or celeb sightings from the Bellagio? I have to imagine some crazy things happened to you during that period of your life.
Okay, I'll do a few.
All right.
I was standing outside in the host position outside the restaurant at the Bellagio, and there's a few main aisles, right? And they're meant to confuse you, but there are ones, bigger, wider ones, that are the main aisles that lead you out of the casino. And so I saw this larger round group of people moving in unison and this kind of around. And all of a sudden that group gets within about 15 feet of me, and I see someone dressed white cowboy hat, white veil, white outfit all the way to the toes. It's Michael Jackson.
Whoa.
And it was really rad. Okay, another one.
It's a good one.
This one's probably even better.
Okay, I'm ready.
Standing at the front door of the restaurant, and this dude walks up to me. It's Muhammad Ali. And he says, "You got a burger on the menu?" And I go, "You got a reservation?" And he goes, "Ha ha 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 ha." I go, "I think we know who you are, right?" And I go, "But if you don't have a reservation, man, I'm just not sure." And he takes his wrist like this and does a fake punch at me in my chest. And I'm like, "Oh my God, Muhammad just threw a punch at me in my smart ass." And I was like, that was the best thing. And then he took out a pamphlet of the Quran and the benefits of the Quran, and he signed that and folded it up and stuffed it in my pocket. And we went inside because we didn't really have the burger he wanted, and ground up a steak for him and made it into a burger. And we fed Muhammad Ali a fresh ground strip steak burger.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Did that feel like an incredible day at work?
I pretended like I didn't. It was an incredible day at work. I pretended like I didn't know who Muhammad Ali was.
Yeah.
We ain't got no table for you. He threw a fake punch at me. I melted. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. If he had connected, I would have been down. I would have liked it probably. I think he should have really hit me. I think that would have been amazing.
I think forevermore you should start your bio with "nearly punched by Muhammad Ali" or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I'll toss you, I don't know if it's New Zealand or not, Minneapolis or St. Paul.
I'm in St. Paul mostly now, and I live here. I really have a crush on this town for what it is, not what it isn't. And all due respect, I live here. I live in St. Paul.
That's the right answer. There's enough Minneapolis.
St. Dinette is here too.
I love it.
We all live here.
Indeed.
But you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome to St. Paul. I want you in St. Paul. If I say St. Paul, I want it to be like, wait, come over.
Same. I'm with you. What's a favorite current menu item from one of your restaurants?
This chicken dish at St. Dinette. It's a chasseur sauce, which is a mushroom hunter stew. It's got a bunch of olives in it, so it's got a little brininess and earthiness to it. There's a little fennel salad on top of the fried chicken breast, which is pounded thin, paillard style, and then breaded with panko breadcrumbs. And that's just so it's that hunter's mushroom stew, the fried chicken breast, and then that fennel, crunchy fennel salad with a little vinaigrette on it. Right now, that to me is hitting so hard. Dinette is, I mentioned it on my Instagram feed today. Dinette is 9 years old, and I'm just as proud of it as I have been the whole time.
Hmm.
And it's really good right now, so I'd go there. I'd go there. Mucci's is awesome. But
Yeah.
Dinette sometimes fills my soul. It's cafe, but it's pretty.
Yeah.
A little intention. A little. You don't have to dress up to feel a little romance. Sometimes. A little attention. Yeah. Anyway.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to bump it up my list to visit next. What's a restaurant in Minnesota or beyond that you wish you would have opened? Like another one, like somebody else's concept that you look at and you go, man, I wish I would have done that one.
I've worked in numerous styles of restaurants. And the one that I really wanted to work didn't. And I would say it's still the one that I might chase after would be a bagel deli type thing.
I was going to say, I read press about you where you said you were scouting locations in Minneapolis for a Jewish deli concept.
And we opened it as Maven before it flipped into Mucci's. So I did get it open.
Got it.
But we never found level footing with an all-day concept in Uptown. We thought we could pull there. And then we had a really hard winter, and it just was a really hard thing to fill. So that one, in terms of what I want to eat and what I tried to do, just didn't connect. But I really still adore that. I might say if I was going to do something. To knock that out of the water, those simple foods, a deli, it just feels like something deeper, the connection like Katz's has with people.
And finally, for the rapid fire, do you have any dream guests for Niver Niver Land? Anyone who you like is on that vision board?
Marcus Samuelson.
Guy you worked with a number of years ago, yeah?
You know, he's an international star. I worked with him for 3 years. You can't, but that was 20 years ago. And I hang on to that. He's a hero. I hang on to that like I hang on to myself being Italian. Those times in my life, like that I got to travel with him, what he did for me in terms of leveling me up and pushing me. That's a guy I have a lot to thank for. And that's a guy that really pushed me as much as anybody else to understand excellence and drive and being multifaceted and curious and even silly.
Yeah, we will look out for that episode to come. I'm just going to manifest it for you. I'm sure it will.
Thank you. I haven't asked officially.
Tim Niver of Mucci's and St. Dinette and Mucci's Frozen Pizzas and Niver Niver Land, an excellent podcast that all my listeners should go check out. I just got to say, I admire the heck out of you. I think your restaurants are amazing. Your podcast is great. You've just really given me an interesting window, I think, to the world in which you live in and operate in. And also many of my special celebrations and occasions have been celebrated at one or multiple of your restaurants. I was just there last night for my wife's birthday. Thank you for being you. And equally as importantly, thanks for spending some time with us today on Connection Request. I really appreciate you.
I really appreciate it too. Thanks for inviting me on and having me.
That is it for today's episode of Connection Request. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you make sure you're following us? It'd mean a lot. Today's show is produced by Marie Ionazzo and me, Joel Leeman. Our theme music is by the amazing Mike Lauer and his band Viewers Like You. It's from their album Panoramia. The show is a production of Shrug Content, a podcast studio based in Minnesota. You can learn more about us at shrugcontent.com. Special thanks to SK Coffee, our presenting sponsor. You can learn more about them at skcoffeeplease.com. If you live around the Twin Cities, ping me. I'll take you there myself. First cup is on me. You can connect with the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Send us feedback, guest ideas, and funny TikToks at connect@shrugcontent.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.